With this, I would like to welcome all colleagues who logged on from afar, who will listen to our streaming. Some of you couldn't come here because of the storm. Now the storm's over, but Ola Källenius will join us now. Ola Källenius, the CEO of Daimler AG. He will tell you everything you need to know about the past fiscal. Welcome. Thank you, Jörg. Thank you very much indeed. We'd like to open our annual press conference. Before I get started delivering my presentation, I would like to share some thoughts with you about the past year. I studied what we did in 2019, what kind of measures did we initiate, and what about the future? Well, we could say that in the second half of the year, we've been able to stabilize our performance. We have tackled many challenges like cost structure, cost effectiveness. There are many things we can be proud of. We've got fantastic products. We've got a brand that is globally renowned and admired. There are many, many fans. And of course, there are 300,000 employees. But having said all that, our financial results that we'll present for 2019 are not really results that we would like to see in the future too. They are not good enough, simply. This doesn't really reflect what the proud and good company usually can achieve, and this is not what I want to achieve in the future. So we've initiated some measures, and we will introduce some more measures to improve cost structures and cost effectiveness. But more importantly, we will take strategic decisions in order to ensure that our company, during this exciting decade of the transformation of the automotive industry, will be where it has a right to be over the next 15 years. I would like to talk about that, present an analysis of 2019 and provide an outlook of 2020. But I would also like to give you an idea of what we want to achieve strategically. Now, let me start by taking a look at the results. Here we start. Now, what were the key messages for last year? Yes, after a rather slow start during the first 6 months of 2019, there was a market recovery for Mercedes-Benz. We've safeguarded the #1 position as the leading luxury brand in the world. We've been able to safeguard it, to justify it, and there's a very high demand for our attractive products. The underlying performance and whatever we said we'd like to achieve in terms of financial results in the second half of the year, let me tell you that the measures we've taken have been effective. They showed their effect. The underlying performance was good, but we haven't really achieved the level that we intend to achieve in the medium to long term. Net industrial liquidity, about 6 billion at the end of the second quarter, and we've reached a target of higher than 10 billion. 10 billion is the minimum liquidity for our industry business. Strategy regarding CO carbon neutral mobility, sustainable mobility. Well, we've changed tack here. We've defined a strategy that we will relentlessly implement in order to achieve carbon neutral mobility. And as I said earlier, we've initiated a series of measures designed to reduce the cost and improve the cost structure, so that the profit-generating power of the company will be strengthened. Today, we also confirm our outlook for 2020 on the basis that we presented in the middle of November of last year in our capital market statement. Let's take a closer look at the figures. Sales, 3.3 million units, about same level as last year or the previous year. About 5 billion sales revenue. EBIT to 4.3 from 11.1, impacted by special effects. If you take a look at the adjusted EBIT, the figure reads 10.3. Certainly, this is a range that fits 2018, but it doesn't reflect our ambition. It doesn't really reflect what we expect of our company and what we want to see in the future. Free cash flow follows suit, 1.4 in 2019, unadjusted 2.7. Let me briefly review the various divisions, and let me start by talking about Mercedes-Benz cars. As I mentioned earlier, we've defended our #1 position that we could safeguard, but there's a very important point here. It's not selling at any cost that we are concerned with. We want to grow profitably, and our goal now and in the future is to grow profitably. Our price premium vis-à-vis the relevant competitors is something we want to defend, and we want to focus on strategic product decisions. We want to focus on those products and model series that offer the best revenue in each segment. Last year, regarding the SUVs and our new plant in Aguascalientes in Mexico, the launch was extremely challenging. We couldn't really reach the units that we had intended to achieve originally. In the second half of the year, we've been able to turn around the situation, change it for the better. We are now back on track, both with regard to Mexico, the United States, and with regard to various battery plants in Germany and elsewhere in the world. Ambition 2039. This helped us take the turn on our path to sustainable mobility for Mercedes-Benz. Modern luxury will become sustainable modern luxury. This is the promise of the Mercedes-Benz brand. This is the promise to create a better future. And it's not only about products. We adopt a very holistic approach. We start with the supply chain, going on to our own production, our products, and through to the use of our products regarding electricity, hopefully to be produced by renewables. We have begun to change our plants to become carbon neutral. We started in Europe. Our commitment is to change all European plants by 2022. In Tuscaloosa, they have similar plants, and the other plants around the world will also change so that they can produce in a carbon-neutral way. And we've initiated a series of measures to improve our cost effectiveness, to restructure our costs, and to improve our cash flow. Let's take a look at the figures for 2019. Sales, more or less at the prior year level, slightly higher. The same goes for revenue, EBIT, including special effects, 3.4 billion, adjusted 5.8 billion, ROS 6.2%, more or less. Vans. 2019 certainly was a year of disruption. Well, you may wonder, because it's a very sound business, what happened? We'll see in a moment. Let's start with the products. We have a very good and strong product portfolio, and there's also a new sales record in mid-March. We launched a new Sprinter, which appealed very well. The V-Class received a facelift, and the EQV, that is the electrified V-Class, was also presented. We will start this year to produce the electrified V-Class. Similar to Tuscaloosa, we opened a new plant for Vans in the US, and we faced similar challenges. We've been able to stabilize the situation in the second half of last year. Cash flow, same logic as with Mercedes-Benz cars. We've introduced a series of measures in order to make sure that Vans will be profitable again at the designed level. This is a very drastic representation of one-off effects. Sales and revenue very high, 300 million EBIT last year, minus 3.1 billion this year. EBIT at the prior year level without one-off effects. Now, these one-off effects were mainly due to bookings in relation to diesel. We will stop producing the X-Class, and there was a callback campaign by Takata, a supplier. Vans will not remain at this profitability level, and the 300 million underlying of last year without special effects, this is not good enough, and this will definitely change this year. Everything will move in the right direction, and it will go as planned and desired. Daimler Trucks. Daimler Trucks are the leading global manufacturer of trucks. We performed very strongly in the North American market. That is of paramount importance to us, coming from a very high level. Demand slackened a bit, especially in the fourth quarter. We are very proud of the new Actros. It's our flagship truck, and it won the Truck of the Year award in Martin. Our customers' feedback was excellent throughout Europe regarding efficiency, new technologies, etc. They all say it's an absolute highlight. The European market weakened a bit, especially in Q4. This, of course, had an effect on our sales. Similar to passenger cars' Ambition 2039, we have an Ambition 2039 for trucks. And we want to become carbon neutral in the future, using different technologies. We already have e-powered trucks on the road, and we develop fuel cell further, especially for products that require more energy, for example, semi-tractor trailers. With the acquisition of Torque and the reprioritization of our autonomous driving activities, we launched another development, a development of a case where in the US we will be able to implement hub-to-hub transports in the US autonomous. That is our aspiration. It's going to be a most exciting case in the future, especially if you consider the cost per mile driven and by how much it could be lowered. So this is a very important decision for us in 2019. Well, the markets slackened a bit. Indonesia, Asia, there was a slight dent in 2019, so sales are below the prior year level. However, due to the structure, revenue is a bit higher. The EBIT of 2.5 billion, certainly historically speaking, is not a bad result for the trucks division, but it's not what we want to see. There's still room for improvement, and we have to do better. We've also initiated measures designed to improve this EBIT for the trucks division. Buses. Now, this is a jewel in the trucks family. We are the leading bus manufacturer. We are also leaders in profitability. Strong position, strong product portfolio. The new e-Citaro, our electrically powered bus, appeals excellently with our customers. From a technological point of view, it's definitely a benchmark product. The second and third generations are currently under development, and we are also toying with the idea of using the fuel cell to drive this bus. And cost management also showed some effects. Sales high by 2,000 units, revenue high, profitability 283 million. That's a very sound EBIT for buses in 2019. Let's talk about Daimler Mobility. Daimler Mobility, that's a business of paramount importance for our two industrial divisions. Every second car that we sell is financed or is endowed with a product of Daimler Mobility. So the colleagues work hand in glove, sales and industrial divisions with Daimler Mobility. As far as risk management is concerned, I think we are very, very cautious, prudent, and we always keep an eye on our credit risk. And even though the regulatory requirements in this business are becoming ever stricter, the consequence being that we have a negative impact on return on equity. We have very sound and robust margins in this business. Another highlight certainly is the joint venture of mobility service providers called Now. Daimler and BMW founded the joint venture, and after it was founded and the management team sat together, in the second year we checked the portfolio and we prioritized it. We also took decisions on allocations to mobility services that we think are most promising. And the colleagues also improved efficiency and the intelligent and smart use of digitalization. So they got a lot of things moving. Figures, new business, 74 billion, contract volume, 162 billion. EBIT 2019 includes one special effect because of the foundation of the joint venture with Now. And if you take a look at adjusted EBIT, you can see 1.8 billion. You cannot really compare this to 2018. In 2018, we had a special and an extraordinary charge because of toll collect. But it's been quite a good year for Daimler Mobility. However, there is still room for improvement. There's still potential to be tapped, both at the top and bottom lines, and we want to exploit this potential. Now, summing up, our group EBIT is 4.3 billion, net profit 2.7 billion, cash flow 1.4, and our net industrial liquidity, like we said last year, is higher than 10 billion. That's the limit. This past fiscal, it's 11 billion. Well, compare this to the figures that we saw for the end of Q2. We have a very rigid physical inventory management, and we've set it up especially towards the end of the year. The 16.3 that we achieved in 2018 cannot be compared to the 11 of 2019. IFRS changed the methods, so the actual figure would be 13.1. So it would be from 13.1 to 11.
Wenn man das jetzt zusammenfasst und guckt, 4,3 Milliarden EBIT, und man schaut sich die Sondereffekte für das Jahr 2019 an, da sieht man, hat man drei Themenblöcke. Die Verfahren in Zusammenhang mit Diesel.
The proceedings, Takata, and the restructuring, where we decided that X-Class was to be phased out because the market opportunity didn't come our way as originally planned, so that we took a cut here. And that cost us 800 million. Then an adjustment after resetting priorities for Now, and also the change in the valuation in the context of the foundation of the joint venture. The adjusted EBIT gives us 10.3 billion euros for the year 2019. We have a clear-cut dividend policy. The dividend policy is 40% of the net profit. If we take the net profit of 2.7 billion and use that as a basis, that will result in 90 cents per share. That has to be covered by the cash flow that we expect in the next period. And we study that very carefully. Our net industrial liquidity is not to fall below 10 billion. We want to keep it at that level. But going forward, in our cash flow plan, we'll say, yes, the dividend policy is something that we'll stick to. 90 cents, that's clearly below what we had last year, is certainly not certainly not what we want to see in the future. We want to increase our earning power, and we want to have better cash conversion rates, and this is how we want to increase our cash flow, so that in the future we will be able to return to other levels of dividend payouts. Now let's see. What's on our to-do list for 2020? What's the plan? What are we working on? The year started out at a high speed. Let's see, what's the outlook? The outlook is a confirmation of what we said on Capital Markets Day in mid-November, that was. For sales, cars, slight decrease, but you must bear in mind that we have a reset of our business model for smart. This year we will convert completely to electrics. That is, no ICE vehicles for smart, and we carefully estimated what the coronavirus would mean for us in China, but it's far too early days to do a comprehensive or complete picture of the situation and as it will develop. Vans, slight decrease as well. Trucks, mainly United States, starting from a very high level, and we see a normalization of the market. For buses, also a slight decrease. Return on sales. The guidance rules have to be applied for Germany. The message is clear. We'll stick to what we said on Capital Markets Day. For cars and vans, 4 to 5%, trucks and buses 5%, and ROE for Daimler Mobility 12%. And that translates into the guidance 4 to 5 for cars and vans, 5 for trucks and vans, and 12 for mobility. So that confirms what we said on Capital Markets Day. And that also means for our underlying performance, which is very important here, we're talking about the underlying performance of our business, that we have a cash conversion rate for cars and vans of 0.7 to 0.9. That's our target. And for trucks and buses, it will be between 0.8 and 1. For cars and vans, that means that we're going north in terms of cash conversion rate. Cash is something that will receive much more priority going forward. What does that mean then? For our outlook. For the group EBIT, well, significant increase. Free cash flow, significant increase. Excluding those regulatory proceedings, where we can't say for the time being when they will be concluded and what that will mean for cash flow. But the underlying free cash flow, significant increase. And then there's investment into R&D, into new factories, and other investments, well, at a very high level, but we'll cap that at that high level. This is part of our cash management plan. We want to allocate money where we believe that we'll find the best profitability going forward. And of course, we will also carefully examine the efficiency of our capital expenditure. How can we get more for the money that we spend? What's the agenda then? In my presentation, I already explained most of it. There are two things that we need to do. We know that in the next 2 or 3 years, we have a lot of work on our plates on cost efficiency and cost structure. This is really the foundation to establish earnings power so that we can afford to invest into the future. But we'll do both things. In the short and mid-term, we will increase our financial performance, and we will keep investing into new technologies. Our industry is in the process of transformation. Our company is transforming. This company will not be the same in 10 years' time. In fact, we will emerge completely changed. Well, we will have sustainable mobility, but we will also have become much more digital. All of that requires, of course, that we'll have to invest differently than in the past. In our cash and cost measures, so we've made some headway already. I'm not saying that this is easy going, but the steps that we initiated in 2019 are now gaining traction, if I may put it that way. And for the first 6 or 7 weeks this year, we are definitely on track. And the cost savings that we've defined beforehand, well, we'll be able to deliver on what we promised. On personnel costs, well, we presented figures last autumn, and by the end of 2022, the plan is to reduce costs by 1.4 million every year. We discuss things with our social partners. There's a framework agreement in place, and this spring we will now be able to start implementing. All kinds of actions will be taken at our disposal in order to realize these cost savings, and we'll use termination offers, early retirement offers, everything within the framework agreement. Most of the savings will be realized in the next 2 years. That also includes restructuring costs, and the benefits can then be reaped increasingly in the years after. So very, very, very important, and I said that earlier. It's very important to really switch over and to switch over to e-mobility. I don't think there's anything else that we invest so much funds into. This year, the XEV portfolio, that is e-vehicles and plug-in hybrids, they will see a 4-fold increase. Going forward, 2021, we will double after that. The plan that we made in autumn to do just that, the plan is in place and the plan has not changed. Also, vehicles with 48 volts systems will be included. These are the so-called mild hybrids. Their number is to double this year. We'll need that in order to achieve our carbon targets. And all the decisions on architecture that we make going forward, well, we are not only looking at the next 3 years, mind you, we are making decisions on platforms for the years 24, 25, 2030 and after. And electric first is what guides us in our decisions. Passenger cars will ramp up most quickly, but it's not only passenger cars that will electrify. It's also vans, it's also commercial vehicles that will go electric. It's the complete Daimler portfolio that will go electric. And our battery factories will not only be erected in Germany, but also in the other countries where we produce. In the beginning of this year, I went to Tuscaloosa, where we invest 1 billion into e-mobility and the preparation of new e-vehicles. Digitization. Well, there's this fundamental shift towards carbon-free mobility. But this is definitely the greatest opportunity for our business, and it means the greatest transformation of our business. And we're not talking only about products, we're also talking about our company and our processes. Well, products, already a couple of years ago, we decided on something fundamental, namely that hardware and software architectures would be separated in the future. We are now building our own operating system, if you wanted to put it that way, for Mercedes-Benz, an operating system which can then go into any hardware structure. We call it software-dedicated architecture, which is a comprehensive operating system. Last week, I visited the software people, And what they're doing right now is to get out the first better version. And there's a prototype, a C-Class, which I was able to drive, and I was able to test the first functionalities. And this is the important message. Restructuring, personnel reduction, this is what always comes up, but we will not use the lawnmower approach. In fact, we will try to do that intelligently. There are some fields where we'll see massive growth. Software engineers, software programmers, well, we'll need many more of them. And this is where we'll see some personal growth. In other areas, we'll need to streamline. This is not something only for passenger cars. This is just as important for CVs. About digitization, well, digitization as a new business model, well, it in fact requires us to rethink our conventional business model, and it's a huge opportunity for us. And digitization is something that we'll use across the board, everywhere in our company, to increase our productivity. Now, let me now turn to the last point. Well, how do we propose to go about it? This is a very big company, 300,000 employees. Well, how will we go about it? Well, it's a matter of leadership culture, among others. 3 or 4 years ago, we started an initiative, both bottom-up and top-down, and we called this approach the Leadership 2020 approach. What we got going there, well, when we got going, I didn't expect 2020 to arrive so quickly. But still, we brought about a cultural change in this company. And in fact, what we wanted was for this company to respond much faster to the changes challenging us. We have now renamed this program. It's called Leadership 20X now, because what we need is to try out new forms of organization, and we need to change more quickly, and we also need to get accountability. You cannot be empowered if you are not accountable. So if we cannot produce the financial figures, and if we cannot produce the cash flow that we need for the amount of capital expenditure that we'll need in the future, then this model will not work. So you need to do both things. The golfers would say short game and long game, and we'll do both at the same time. Such a cultural change, a cultural transformation is certainly a marathon for such a big company, but it's a matter of mindset, and we will not relent. We will not stop. We have a great ambition. Well, first move the world is our purpose, and we want to be one of the architects of mobility and for our segment of the future. And then you have to be very ambitious, but you also have to have the determination and the discipline. And, well, certainly I am a realist, and the next 3 years that will a bag full of work. It will be very tough to get all the actions going that we set on track. But we are highly motivated, and even though we will not on the planet Pandora by the year 2149, as this will tell you, this is the Avatar-inspired vehicle that we showed in Las Vegas. Well, we're still thinking forward, and this is an ambitious ambition that we want this strong brand to reap.
Ich darf jetzt auch Harald Wilhelm, unseren Finanzvorstand, und Martin Daum, unseren Vorstand für Trucks.
I would also like to welcome our CFO Harald Wilhelm and Martin Daum, the member of the Board of Management Trucks. And before we start with the Q&A session, I would like to interview the gentleman together with Ola Källenius. Ola, 2 topics were discussed intensely in the press. 15,000 jobs would be lost, and the S-Class will be stopped. This is what we could see in WTE. Well, last week I drove a prototype of the S-Class. So actually, this misses the point. I'd say if we were in school, the new S-Class will be launched at the end of this year. and it will be a truly fascinating car. Stay tuned. But the portfolio is going to be streamlined, correct? Well, I told you so in my speech. Looking ahead, we will focus in all our segments on those model series, products and technologies that we believe have the most power to generate revenue. This applies in the short and medium term, but it also applies to all decisions that we take in the long term. We don't want to sell for the sake of selling. We focus on profitable growth. And what about the 15,000 jobs that are to be lost, apparently or actually? Well, we defined the plan in autumn. 1.4 billion euros shall be saved in terms of staff cost. Of course, this also applies to jobs, but it's a bundle of measures. It's other things that we can do. People will retire. For example, there are working time models, working hour models that will be adjusted. We will be able to offer more flexible capacities. But yes, there will also be severance agreements. We have not communicated a concrete figure, but the 1.4 billion is what applies, and nothing has changed. Harold, 90 euro cents dividends. Well, how did you calculate this proposal regarding the dividends, and what does the Board of Management think of this dividend? Well, Ola actually talked about it already. The basis of this dividend is, of course, how much you earned in 2019, and it's the net profit of 2.7 billion. Of course, there are negative impacts by special effects, one-off effects of 1.6 billion, but what we heard earlier, so the basis would be €2.22. That's the factual basis for the proposal for a dividend, 2.22. Last year in November, we said we have a dividend policy of 40%, which we'd like to confirm and continue at the same time. We would like to make sure that the dividend can be paid from the cash flow. Let's take a look at the 2019 figures. Yes, cash flow 1.4 billion. We've achieved our goal, and we are above the 10 billion. Net industrial liquidity, 11 billion. So on this basis, we and the Supervisory Board will propose to the annual general meeting to pay out a dividend of 90 euro cents. Now, what does this mean? On the one hand, of course, we want to deliver on our promise regarding the shareholders, but we also want to keep the balance sheet of the company stable of above 10 billion. This is extremely important for our credit rating because this is the basis for our financing business in tune to the volume that we mentioned today. Looking at absolute figures, I know that 90 cents compared to what we paid out in previous years is a bit disappointing, both for the shareholders and for us. This is why we focus so much on improving our cost structure. We want to improve our margins, and we want to increase our cash flow, as Ola said. Let's take a look at the guidance for 2020. Well, at the group level, the all-in EBIT, we assume that all-in EBIT will improve significantly in 2020 compared to 2019. Talking now, this is no dividend commitment for 2020, for the dividend that will be paid out in 2021. But if we proceed on this assumption, I think we can show that it is our aspiration to pay a higher dividend in the years to come. Harold, you're also in charge of Daimler Mobility in addition to finances. What about the prospect of Daimler Mobility? Well, I think the key of our mission, of the purpose of Daimler, is individual mobility and global transport. So together with the management team of Daimler Mobility, we looked at the question of how to support all this. And we identified 3 pillars. One pillar, of course, is we have to improve sales of our vehicles, passenger cars, trucks, you name it. We support sales of our vehicles. You heard that every other vehicle sold by Daimler is supported by Daimler Mobility by leasing or financing projects. The second pillar of the Daimler Mobility strategy is the fleet business that we intend to expand. We want to be able to offer more flexible solutions to fleet customers. We want them to be able to choose more flexibly between various products, and we are well on our way to expand this business and to make it more attractive, to enhance the attractiveness of our products and to make it more attractive to an even broader range of customers. Number 3, mobility services. And here you can see, as it were, if you look from years to minutes, that we can be extremely flexible. We offer highly short-term solutions when it comes to ride-hailing, car sharing. In 2019, we bundled our activities with BMW. We are extremely well set up in this regard. Our customer growth rates in 2019 were very promising in this field. We pursue a very clearly defined strategy that defines all elements in the Daimler portfolio: ride-hailing, car-sharing, parking, and charging. We do that jointly with BMW in this respect. This is the Daimler Mobility Strategy 2020 and beyond, from years to minutes. Martin, Ola mentioned it in his presentation. Autonomous trucks will be with us soon. The question is when, how many, and will this actually be a business model? Well, if they come, they will become a business model to really respond to the lack of drivers, the shortage of drivers, and to respond to the situation on roads, to increase road safety. I think we are clearly focused on that. We focus on the United States. We have stable legislation, excellent infrastructure, long routes, long haulage, and many trucks are used. Together with Torque, with whom we joined forces in the beginning of 2019, we had an excellent start. We are on American roads in the US. Currently, we drive the trucks in order to find mistakes and faults, and we do find them, so we can develop them further. And your first question, or the first part of it, when will it happen? Well, I'm happy to be able to tell you next year. This is going to be an exciting technology. Okay, in Europe, there is a very strict CO2 regulation. It's very ambitious. What does it imply for the drive technologies that we see in Europe? Well, in a nutshell, until 2025, we have to cut emissions by 15% compared to the average of all trucks sold in the market. In other words, before the end of 2020, we do not even know which basis to proceed from. And from this unknown basis, we have to go down by 15% by 2025, and then another 15% until 2030, so 30% in sum total. This cut by 30% is technically impossible. There's one phrase: you can't beat physics. You can't really defy the law of physics. It's impossible. We can only achieve this if we succeed in making carbon neutral vehicles, that is, battery-powered or fuel cell-powered vehicles, or both. And many vehicles have to be equipped with these. Well, we've started. The first vehicles are on the roads. The e-Citaro can be seen on many roads in European cities. A series-produced model, the e-Actros, that is being put through its paces at customers, and I'm very hopeful. I think when it really comes to the test by the end of the decade, we'll have a highly attractive product portfolio indeed. What we do need, in addition to that, well, this product portfolio will always be more expensive there is a base stock of trucks powered by diesel, because this is the most efficient way to transport heavy goods on steep roads over mountains. So everything else will be more expensive, and I think it is up to the legislator to make sure that there are equal opportunities for all customers, so that customers will not be penalized when they drive carbon-neutral vehicles. And if we can offer attractive products and the customer can make money with that, carbon-neutral transport of goods will see no obstacles. Well, Harold, another question. The dividend is going down. The profit-sharing bonus for the employees has gone down. What does the management do in order to contribute to the cost-saving measures? Well, two things. Of course, the management's remuneration is closely tied to the share price and our financial results. So if it is not correct, if the share price is not as it should be, managers also earn less money. In addition to that, we said that in the course of our adjustments, we will cut 10% of all management positions over the years to come. So we want to streamline the management structure at Daimler. We want to make it leaner. These are the two measures. Okay, so now the floor is open for your questions.
And my master Plato brief. Now, what about the announced restructuring costs for this year? What are we here to expect? Could we hear euro sum? If you do not want to give exact figures, but, well, since you're avoiding comments, the number will probably be correct. And then the litigation costs, which are very high, or the accruals that really were a burden on your budget last year. Is that all, or will there be more to come? Well, restructuring costs. What we can tell you to pull through with our program, with the expected benefits of 1.4 billion euros run rate by 2022. Well, we estimate today that in total that will cost us some 2 billion euros to achieve. This is what we assume, so that by 2020, some 1.2 billion will take effect, will have an effect on the EBIT of the country. The cash effect will occur a bit later, that is by 2021 and 2022. But it all depends on how fast the measures can be implemented and how quickly we can reduce capacities. Well, about ongoing litigation. Well, what we want, and that's our goal, is to come to a resolution. What we need to do in the process is to do an assessment, a fair assessment of the charges that we expect on the basis of the information available at the time. And we did that as we planned 2019 and 20. And this is the number that's reflected in the figure that we gave you for 2020. As far as other risks are concerned, well, they can be found in the risk report. The Franz Hublik of Handelsblatt. Thank you. You mentioned several times over that you'll want to focus on products, the products with the greatest earnings power. And what about the B class then? Does it still fit into your picture? We will not give statements on individual products. We will do that as we go to market. But in the segments that we are in with the compact vehicles and then the mid-sized vehicles, the premium class vehicles, well, we'll look at every single segment and we'll then look at the future architectures and try and identify the earnings power. And this is the basis for our portfolio decisions. That is for decisions going forward. Where we have already developed a vehicle which is in the market already, the principle applies as always. Sell as much at reasonable prices where possible. Max Segler of Süddeutsche Zeitung. Good morning. 3 brief questions. Given the cost and the poor bottom line that we've discussed in extenso, the question is whether cooperations and partnerships are really necessary. There are three models, Geely, Renault-Nissan, or the southern axis, that is BMW. So my question, are you talking to those three players? Or do you plan to work more closely with them, or do you intend to conduct such talks with those players? My second question, the plan is to have Mr. Zetsche as the chairman of the supervisory board in the future. Given the situation that he has left you with, would he be the right person to become the chairman of the supervisory board? What do you think in your capacity as the current BOM? Then the third question, sharing. I didn't quite catch the strategy. My impression that you wanted to reduce any car sharing strategies. I'm not quite sure. Is car sharing something which still carries a positive outlook for you? Well, I'll begin and then hand over to Harald in a moment. Let me first give a general statement. Our basic attitude is this. We are in a process of transformation, and we plan to pick up speed. And we are very open-minded for cooperations. Cooperations, we believe, is one way to recoup the high investments that the transformation will require. So our basic attitude is to produce a win-win situation, and we are in favor if we can produce a win-win situation. You mentioned three partners, and we have good projects which each of them in a pipeline. Smart is a good example. Smart was decided last year. It would go into a new unit, and production would go to China. We are now developing the new products which will be out by 2022. And for this business, in this segment, we see that there's a lot of pressure, and it's a very difficult market, and it's very difficult to achieve a margin, and we feel a cooperation is very promising. We're very excited about that, and as I said, in 2 years' time, we'll see the first fruit. With BMW, we've been cooperating for 10 years. There's the industrial toolkit where we have a joint purchasing initiative for common parts, and we also work on autonomous car for private use. And with Renault, we will next year launch the next Citan generation. And as far as that product is concerned, we believe that we'll have a product with a competitive edge. And in this segment, we'll see electrification in the next round. Now, any discussions that have not led to a result, well, you'll understand that I won't talk about them. No matter whether we're talking about these three current partners or any other potential new partners, I can only repeat our attitude. My attitude is intelligent cooperation is part of our strategy of transformation. About the supervisory board, that's a matter for the Presidium, the executive committee of the supervisory board. This is not a matter for the board of management. About car sharing, the now joint venture with BMW, well, we now have three pillars after resetting priorities. One is ride-hailing or free now. The second is charging and parking, self-explanatory. And the third one is share now, which is really the essence of car sharing. This is a highly competitive environment. And of course, both shareholders wondered whether this was innovative going forward. Well, it is definitely interesting from a strategic perspective, but we also want to make some money here. And so after intensive discussions with the share now management, we decided to focus on those areas where we feel we can make most of an impact, but can also make money going forward. And this is why in December we announced that we'd withdraw from the United States and some cities from Europe. But it's not that we will withdraw altogether from this field. It's just that we have different priorities and focuses. Christian Hetzner, please.
Thank you. I also have three questions. Number one, about software. Could you please give us some figures regarding the investment that you want to take into such an important project as Mercedes-Benz OS? Number two, accountability and responsibility. You mentioned the figures for BEVs and plugins that you want to increase twofold this year. Last year, however, you had massive production problems. The GLA in Charleston, you had problems. What did you do? Which specific measures did you take in order to make sure that this year you can actually achieve the production volumes that you promised, that is the 100% increase, and production bans? Well, you said you have the tools in order to reach the targets that you want to reach this year, but the penalties you did not exclude completely. What do you think is the worst case when it comes to penalties? Let me start by answering your last question first. What happens on the market cannot be controlled 100%. So the technologies that we roll out on the road right now pursue a threefold strategy: mild hybrids, electric cars, and fuel cell. And I said we mentally changed our attitude. So we are very confidential that in the next few years we will be CO2 compliant. We knew that 2020 and 2021 will present special challenges. 137 grams was the figure at the end of 2019. Depending on the market, and depending on what happens on the market, we may even be compliant in 2020, 2021, but we cannot guarantee that right now. However, let me tell you that we should come near the goal. What is crucial in this regard is an industrial challenge, and the industrial challenge is the ramp-up of further battery lines, especially further battery lines. Especially here in Germany, but also in plants abroad. We closely cooperate with our system suppliers and plant suppliers. Well, we are on track right now, in mid-February, but I do not want to deny that this is really a very big feat, industrially speaking, this year. As regards launches in the United States, that we stabilized in the second half of last year and that we brought back to the normal level, well, we took a series of measures, especially when it comes to supplier management. It wasn't our own plant that didn't have the capability to produce the desired and required unit numbers, but we didn't really succeed in working at the same pace with all our suppliers. So we've changed our supplier structure, and with the suppliers we have designed a new structure. Software investment. Well, usually we abstain from mentioning individual investment sums regarding certain developments, but I can tell you this much. In the years to come, it's going to be a massive investment. Okay, Harry Pretzlaff, Stuttgarter Zeitung. Mr. Pretzlaff. Yes, I also have three questions, please. First of all, let me get back to HR cost. Mr. Kalenius, you mentioned the figure, but the sum, but not the figure. At the same time, you mentioned headcount targets. You said that they have been defined, but how many heads are actually concerned? And in London, you said that a large part of the savings will come from material cost savings. You never said anything so far about what you planned. And number three, you want to save cost in the truck segment. Mr. Daum, is there any cost savings program? And if so, what does it look like? Thank you. Mr. Pretzlaff, talking about HR cost, we said we don't want to focus too much on a certain figure because we pursue different measures. And of course, there's a difference if somebody retires, if he or she is not replaced, no staff turnover, or to have flexible staff. Maybe there's some severance agreement. All this is possible. Working hours, 40-hour labor contracts, 35-hour labor contracts. So it's a whole series of measures that we refer to. Well, in a catchy phrase, you couldn't really say what it is. We don't want to do that because it's not helpful for the process either. And this is what we agreed with the social partners. 1.4 billion is the figure that's cast in concrete, as it were, and we will implement it. Well, cost saving in terms of material. Well, I said it in my presentation, but maybe I didn't focus enough on that. On our Capital Markets Day in November, I think we mentioned also 3 ROS points that we want to improve. It's one countermeasure to withstand the headwinds that we have, i.e. the increased cost due to CO2 emission cuts, etc. In 2020, we are on track. It's the first year when this plan is implemented, and of course we closely cooperate with our supplier partners, but we also scrutinize our own things. Where can we reduce complexity in an ongoing series? Or what about technical CIPs? Where can we improve and streamline products at the same time? So we use several tools. There are purely commercial tools, but also changes in technology. However, one thing is very important. Yes, of course, over the next 3 years, a lot of work has to be done. But if you look at new architectures, that is by 2025, etc., I think we have to rethink our complexity model. We have to think out of the box, and we are ready and willing for a change of paradigms. What is the customer prepared to pay? What will the customer buy? And is there a way to design complexity in a different way? Can we tap more revenue potential with less complexity and fewer variants? This is another very big topic that we discuss for the future. Martin, your question about trucks, Mr. Pretzlaff, it's a highly diverse picture because we are active around the world. Last year, for example, the Indian market suffered 50%, and yet the company showed a positive result. You can only achieve that if you take intense countermeasures. In Brazil, for example, we are in the middle or near the end of a comprehensive restructuring program. The entire production, the product range has been overhauled completely, and we reduced staff tremendously. And in 2020 and the years after that, this should bear fruit. Buses, trucks, North America. Over the last 6, 7, 8 years, we have set up so many programs. I don't know how many cost-saving programs we've had, and it's a good sign if a company constantly thinks about improving programs. I mean, it's not only about saving costs, but you have to focus on how to save money, of course, and on the other hand, you have to find ways and means to cater to your customers and make them enthusiastic about your attractive products. And we have to apply that to the trucks business in Europe. We've begun already. There's the Stream program that we launched 2 years ago. It bears first fruit now, and we continue on what we saw in the passenger car segment. There are also very attractive offers that we can make to our staff in order to reduce headcount further. As far as strategy is concerned, we will have to cut costs further. Earlier last year, we began with that, and in 2020, we will see the first results. Yes, across the entire truck segment around the world, we try to save costs, but at the same time, it's just as important to invest in the future globally, because only if you can sell attractive products will you be a winner at the end of the day. Mr. Köster, Stuttgarter Nachrichten, you're next. Good afternoon. Yes, I also have three very brief questions. Number one, Mr. Kalenius, you talked about investment and you want to prioritize investment. How about priorities regarding drive technologies? Could you tell us something about the distribution of investment regarding battery technology and other technologies like, for example, the fuel cell, hydrogen, etc.? Then Mr. Denner of Bosch said we should use the Green Deal of the EU in order to recognize the indirect savings brought about by e-fuels when measuring carbon dioxide emissions. Do you support that? And what is the role of e-fuels in your plans regarding drive technologies? And number three, very briefly, cooperations. How do you reconcile your cooperation targets with the development of your own operating system? Doesn't it negatively affect this kind of cooperation? Let me start by talking about the drive technology. You described the three things that are available in order to achieve carbon-neutral mobility. Our priority is passenger cars, and we focus very much on battery electric and plug-in hybrid cars, and this also applies to trucks that distribute in cities and vans in the cities. The fuel cell, well, chronologically speaking, we see it first in big commercial vehicles. The bus project is being implemented already, and we are also designing the concept of a fuel cell for a semi-trailer tractor, and the e-fuels could be used, for example, with our existing IC engines. Talking about IC engines, there's also some more potential that will be tapped in the years to come. I mean, the internal combustion engine will also be equipped with 48V. As far as Mr. Denner is concerned, I fully support what he says. It's not only e-fuels, there are also biofuels. For example, you can use biological waste in order to produce fuels that will also help to cut carbon dioxide emissions. And a few things are going on in my home country, in Sweden, in this regard. It would make sense to include this also in order to reduce overall CO2 emissions. But the 37.5% that we have to achieve from 2020 to 2030 is something that we have to achieve. We do that, but the Green Deal is not only about CAFE. It covers the entire CO2 emission. And the energy sector should be included and should be taken into account. This would make sense. Next, cooperation and operating systems. Operating systems. Well, let me put it this way. We do it on our own, but of course we also cooperate because it's a very complex technical structure. So we do cooperate with other tech companies in the design of such an operating system.
Taylor von Reuters.
Taylor from Reuters. Thank you. I have two questions, in fact. One on software operating systems. Can you describe that? Could that become a business model? And the software operating system, could you license it to others? Is that how you conceive of it? And then when will it be here? Will it be far out there, far out into the future, or will it be in the market in the midterm? And then my second question. In the presentation this morning, you said that the coronavirus might have a negative impact on the supply chain. Could you give us details? Is it that factories in Europe will come to a standstill because there are delivery problems from China? Let me begin with the software. Is it conceivable, such a business model? Well, yes, I think it's definitely conceivable. But what might be a business model is that the more domains we have in a vehicle that are based on digital content, the more business can be offered in the life cycle of a product. Well, in fact, we already started on that, small domains, when we introduced MBUX. Subscriptions, we started with that. I myself, in the B class of my wife, Mercedes-Benz, suggested that I could have 1999 to install Mercedes Office. My wife didn't want that, but you can do business. You can really do business with digital use cases, right? And that will grow going forward as soon as a car has different operating models, but with different domains. Well, it's like Windows. This is the analogy I like. Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and within these applications, in fact, customers could then be offered more use cases over time. Licensing, possibly, conceivably, but I wouldn't exclude it. Let me put it that way. When will it be there? When will you have it? MBUX, which we already have in our cars, the next generation will be in the S class. Well, we've taken the first baby steps in the right direction, but as well, the fully fledged version, well, we're just starting to program such a system. In the next 2.5, 3 years, I think partial domains might already be there. The complete picture in 4 years' time or so. And Ed asked about the factories that might come to a standstill. They're not standing still yet, but I'm making phone calls to China every day. I did so this morning, in fact. Production in China, in our factory in China, was started, a very careful ramp-up. There are different regions, of course, in China, and the regions are starting step by step, and they're starting operations. As I said, step by step. It's too early. It's early days, really. We're talking about global supply chains, tier 1, 2, 3, and 4, and in how far other factories might be affected, it's too early to say anything. But our purchasing department is tracking all suppliers to find out whether anything's in the pipeline, and if yes, when. But at this time, since China is just ramping up very, very carefully, a forecast, I wouldn't want to give a forecast here. Nothing has come to a standstill, no. Production hasn't stopped. Everything is running at this time, as we speak. Jürgen Hase, Dinselfinger Zeitung. I have two questions. The market launch of the new S-Class at the end of the year, as you said, is this in line with what you had originally planned, or do you have problems with suppliers? Did supplier problems cause a delay? Second question, the factory 56 in Sindelfingen is to be one of the greenest and most modern factories. It was to open at the end of the last year. Do they actually produce there, or hasn't production started there yet? Well, production launch at the end of the last year. Well, I never heard of that or wasn't invited. I didn't know of that date, but well, we'll start this year. Production has already started. And Factory 56, and well, the technology and the processes there, well, all of it will be really ahead of the pack globally, and we'll also have our own factory-owned 5G network, so it will be exceedingly exciting. There will be a zero carbon footprint, and Mr. Ha, rest assured, as soon as they let me in, you may also come for the official opening. The S-Class will be launched in autumn, and it will come into the market at the end of the year, and it would be the life cycle of the old S-Class would then have a life of 7 years, and that is the standard life cycle, so no surprising. Mr. Fukari of Nikkei, please.
So thank you for taking my question. I have 2 questions. So first question is about China. So last year you were successful again in China in terms of unit sales. I would like to know how the profitability of China business was last year compared to 2018. And if possible, I would also like to know this year's outlook of the profitability in China. And the second question is, you assumed the global passenger car market is around the prior year level, but your outlook of Mercedes-Benz cars unit sales is slightly lower. So could you tell me the background of this difference? So does this just mean you will focus more on profitability side, or there's another reason?
Okay, thank you.
The past many years has been a tremendous success for us in China. And indeed, for the first time, we became the leading premium luxury manufacturer in China last year with almost 700,000 units, which, if we think back some years ago, standing here today would have been unimaginable. So it's for us, by a wide margin, our most important market for passenger cars. We don't disclose individual profitability of our different regional operations. So I'm afraid that you have to bear with me on that one. I can say this though, if I look forward, where is potential in the next 5 to 10 years? There, China remains a large part of the potential pool for car makers and certainly for Mercedes. So it is a market that we're going to continue doubling down on and increasing our footprint in. And sales, slight decrease. You have to take one thing into consideration here. Mercedes-Benz cars unit guidance includes both Mercedes-Benz and Smart. We have a reset of the Smart business model from 2020 forward because we have stopped the combustion side of that business. So that will be a reset on a lower level, electric only for Smart. And we did take into account, I would say, a first very cautious estimate of what's going on with the coronavirus, not a comprehensive estimate by any standard. And that's why we were maybe ever so slightly cautious on that guidance, although the great products that we have enjoy very positive customer feedback and in general robust customer demand as well.
Sie sehen, wir brauchen gar keine Übersetzer.
So we don't need translators, do we? Mr. Gersthoff of Automobilwoche. 3 brief questions, if I may. Mr. Denner, could you speak up? We can hardly hear you. Mr. Denner was very pessimistic about the automotive production globally, and he said that we might be past the prime. And do you regard that into the future as you plan it? And then secondly, complexity. You didn't want to comment on individual models, but could you, I think it's 50 or so now new architectures, if you launch them, how much would remain of the old ones? And then about trucks, fuel cell trucks, when do you think they will be out there on the roads? Iveco, they invest in Ulm into a factory, and they want to get started by 2020. Can we start with trucks? Yes. When will those trucks be out on the road? Well, it depends. Prototype, small series, or do we see what I'd call a full volume production, any volume and any design that customers want? So, test operation of such trucks on the road, well, you can already see that. Buses, for instance, have already been using fuel cells for years. years, and trucks, prototypes, might be out there quite quickly. The fuel cell truck, by the way, is nothing but an e-truck, only that the battery is replaced by a fuel cell. And inverters and e-axle, that will be identical to a battery electric truck. So you might say we already have a fuel cell truck out on the road already. But serial production for the fuel cells post-2025, I'd say, and that is due to the fact that we need the right competition situation so that the customers who buy these vehicles wouldn't have a disadvantage compared to the customers who still drive diesels. Let me turn to volume. The last 18 to 20 months were characterized by the Chinese market going south, and this dragged down the global volume. That, however, mainly impacted the volume segment, while the premium manufacturers, and China is the largest market by far, and the premium manufacturers have seen a growth. So there is a reset in global volumes by which we were not affected. Global suppliers who are present really everywhere will feel that. Going forward, have we reached the auto peak or not? Well, we don't see a peak of the cycle yet. In Asia, but not only in Asia, what we see is growth potential. And for the premium and luxury segments, we see improvement potential in combination with wealth growth. So, in fact, that the premium segment can even grow in markets where markets are already mature and have relatively stable volumes. So, you cannot really predict a linear growth for the next 10 years, but still our expectation is, and we base it on studies that we've examined, we expect numbers to be higher in 10 years' time than we see today. Variance and diversity. Well, in the next years, we are going to see peak complexity because we'll have everything of everything. We'll have ICEs with 48 volts, we'll have e-vehicles, plug-in hybrids, so the portfolio will in fact fan out. But going forward, 2025 going forward, that fan will then close up again. But we cannot tell you how many models we'll have by that time. I wouldn't want to dare give a number. I can just repeat that we'll make the decisions based on business cases, and we'll base it on profitability.
Thank you very much. Right now, I would like to focus on electrification because I don't really have a clear picture in my mind. How many cars will be sold this year with a battery, fully electric or as hybrids? Can you give me a figure, unit numbers, and can you tell me whether the battery producing plants really have the full capacity? You always say it's on track, but I'd like to hear a number. Then I have a second question. Well, please ask. Go ahead. My second question is about the future. You said that you want to reduce complexity throughout. You want to streamline the product portfolio, production, design, engineering. I would like to have a picture of Daimler in the year 2025 and beyond. Would you have fewer industrial workplaces or fewer workplaces in general, or both, fewer plants? Could you give me, please, a rough idea? XEVs. Well, let me adhere to what I said about capital markets. The plan hasn't changed. We are only one step ahead in our implementation. 2% of our sales were XEVs in 2019, globally speaking, and we want to increase this figure fourfold. We said 9% XEVs, that is battery, electric and plug-in hybrid cars, that we want to sell in 2020. And as far as 48V systems are concerned, 200,000 is the figure for last year. We want to increase that twofold this year, more or less. we will increase capacities during the course of the year. So the majority of the capacity has been installed. It's on track. This is what I meant by saying it's on track. And with our system and plant suppliers, we've got the plans for more industrialization this year and the years to come. But it's a very steep ramp-up, a fourfold increase and a dual increase for the year to come. So we will have to install a great number of systems in the plants, not only in Germany, but also abroad, over the next 2 to 3 years. Talking about complexity, if you want to have a complete picture of our product portfolio for 2020 and beyond, I would have to give you so much information that I wouldn't want to share with our competitors. So actually, I'm a bit hesitant and I won't divulge too much information, but let me tell you so much. As far as the architectures are concerned, electric first is the focus in 425 and forward, and the funnel will get smaller. Let me put it this way. Plant structure, yes, more electrification for the body plants. It won't make a big difference before and after. As far as combustion engines and powertrain is concerned, we will see a reduction in complexity in the year 25 and beyond, and we will manage this reasonably. Mr. Raubald, yes, I have 2 questions also. Last year, you implemented a new company structure. How much did you have to pay for implementing this new structure up to now, and how long will it take until this cost will be offset thanks to the efficiency gains generated by this restructuring? Then you talked about non-core businesses this morning. What kind of options do you actually look at more closely? Do you want to plan an IPO, partial IPO, sales, and what non-core businesses are in the focus? It was said that it could be your now. Or, well, to put it differently, what about heavy-duty trucks in the long run? Do you perceive them as core business, or are you open-minded as far as this is concerned? Well, regarding the new company structure, if I remember correctly, at the last AGM, we said that the one-off cost would be about 700 million. I think we finished the implementation with the go live on the 1st of November 2019, with some below that. So it's a significant change, but we've been able to implement it at lower cost. How many years will it take until we see a return? It's difficult to make a forecast, but the new structure, and there's no doubt about that, empowers the individual businesses much more, and this is very important given the big challenges that we are faced with. Decision-taking and implementing decisions will be sped up, and this is very important. And the return factor of this investment in the medium and long term, well, I think we will be able to show more flexibility regarding our capital structure and options. But that's something for the medium and long term. Non-core, I think in 2019, we've also demonstrated by focusing and prioritizing regarding the product portfolio, but also regarding individual investments that we screen. We've confirmed that we are really going on in a tough way. Flixbus comes to my mind. That's a partial divestment. And then heavy-duty trucks. Heavy-duty trucks, that was a very concrete question. Well, we do not have any plans to change the basic capital structure of the company. There is no plan, not even on a shelf or in a drawer. But let me repeat what Harald said. With the project Future, we have the transformation period, and we are currently in a transformation period, and it will be more intense. We want to be flexible just in case we have to react. Okay, unfortunately, I do not know your name. Sebastian Schmidt, Börsenzeitung. Okay, your question. I also have 2 questions. Number 1, operating system. This is, of course, a key part of the future cars of Mercedes-Benz, a key part that in the medium term will also be autonomous driving. Hopefully, you cooperate closely with BMW. Now, do you also consider cooperating more closely with BMW when it comes to operating systems? Do you think about that? Have you talked about it already then? HR cost and cost savings. Usually, you try to do that for included. Well, taking a look at the capital market day, it's more or less backloaded. So in the first year, you don't save too much in 2020. Does this still apply? Maybe you can give me some information about that. Let me start by talking about the operating system. Currently, we are developing it for Mercedes alone. There is no cooperation partner as yet. I do not want to preclude that we would maybe cooperate with someone, but you would have to check from both sides whether or not it will make sense. Currently, there's no plan regarding such a cooperation. We are partially backloaded, I'd say. We started to apply the brakes in 2019, and now we start to move downwards, as it were, especially in Germany. We are familiar with the process of semi-retirement, severance agreements, etc., the various agreements that can be made. So this is automatically a bigger effect within a certain period, but the effect will make itself felt after the period during which you have to make the investment. But we don't want to wait. We've begun to implement it. Now, the last question, Mr. Schreiber. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. One question. The market for e-mobility is unpredictable, as you said, but of course you can exert influence by taking incentives that push electrical models on the market. Well, when would you say let's push the models on the market? We sell them with lower margins, but we thus avoid penalty payments, or we keep models that are not environmentally that friendly and will pay higher penalties. Can you give me some information about this dilemma and how you tackle it? Because you may be faced with it. Basically, your principle should be to act in a rational and eco-friendly manner. And let me call it a big, big challenge. But as far as the CO2 compliance issue is concerned, it's a transitory, a temporary challenge. Now, you talked about pushing vehicles on the market. If you do that, it's very important to have attractive products and to achieve attractive prices, and not to create artificial price structures or destroy prices in the long run, because electricity will be with us anyway, so we'll try to apply our reason and think in economical terms. Well, this was our annual balance sheet press conference. We enjoyed being with you. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Of course, the press team of Daimler is still around to answer more questions. For those of you who feel a bit tired, you can have something to eat next door, and you can also work. There's room for you to work where you won't be disturbed, as back in Europe.